Hello everyone, and welcome to part 4 of our textbook known as Is Knowledge Gendered? So just so you know, this lecture is going to give us a brief introduction into what epistemology is in philosophy, since we'll need that sort of understanding to really gauge what the feminists' criticisms are targeting. So we're going to have a brief introduction to epistemology and then go over some of the more complicated aspects of this week's reading, primarily focusing on the difference between atomistic and situated knowers, and then getting a very clear understanding of standpoint theory and its unique approach as compared to the traditional approaches to knowledge. So, epistemology in philosophy is the study of knowledge and justified belief. So what this means specifically is focusing on different types of knowledge, right? The idea here is that there are different ways of knowing things, primarily two different ways of knowing things. We have categories of procedural knowledge, knowing how to do something or being able to identify who someone is. These are not so much the focus of philosophy, since they have other more biological explanations and not purely things that have to do with mental cognition. So the idea of being able to know how to do something, you've probably heard of like muscle memory, and the fact that we're even learning now that our cells are able to sort of memorize things. That's how they do a lot of what they're able to do to build up our immune systems. Same thing with being able to identify who someone is. This can be impaired by a lot of other physical aspects. I forget what it's called, but there's something where you're not able to recognize faces, things like this. So these are not the types of knowledge that philosophers are concerned with, again, because they have primarily biological explanations, and so we can defer to other disciplines to give us answers to those. What we are concerned with in philosophy is propositional knowledge, knowing that something is the case. So that is knowledge that has to do with declarative statements, right? Declaring that something is or is not the case, and or descriptive statements, right? So if someone were to explain how you know something, right, in terms of muscle memory or cellular memory, the answer to the how question would be something philosophers were concerned with, right? So if you say, well, the reason that we know how to drive a car even when we've been, spacing out for the last hour, and I don't know if any of you have done that, but I certainly have, right? You might think like, oh my gosh, how did I not crash the car? It's almost like your body's able to take over, right? Or, sports players talking about like being in the zone, right? You don't have to give it much mental energy. So if we were to give an answer to how you know that, we would be answering that how question, which philosophers don't really care about, with a descriptive or declarative statement, which philosophers are concerned with, right? So if we say that you're able to memorize those things because your cells are able to, reproduce in various patterns, which is something like memory, right? Being able to copy that instance over and over again, we would say, okay, well, how can we verify? How do you know that the cells are doing that, right? And so philosophy would be concerned with the descriptive statements there, right? So looking at what would count as sufficient evidence in science, right? Whether or not that's been repetitive, right, able to repeat through the scientific method.